10-4, Forkers. Call sign Sea Monkey here. As always, keeping my ears peeled. Shit's been popping off, man. Lark was stolen from the hospital and dragged into the Moon Fork Curling Club and then taken before the king of the chop, whatever the hell that is, some huge abomination with human legs and feet, and the other boys went looking for him and found him and then realized that there's some connection between Ruth's place and maybe one of the hideouts of the creature that took him there, this little pink Dumbo octopus posing to be Magic Marlene. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Or can you? Onwards into strangeness and adventure where the boys are going to talk to Ruth and try to figure this thing out.
Well, hello and welcome back to Moon Fork. I am, as always, the keeper, Johnny, and I'm here with my intrepid players. We've got Clinton Brooks.
Hello.
That's Tyler. We've got Mystic Mikey.
Hey, this is Tommy, aka Mystic Mikey.
And we've got Lark.
What's up, Jack?
And today we are going to dive back into our mystery. The crew of adventurers realize that there's a similarity in the flooring between what Lark saw and kind of a weird Lynchian vision with these two octopi and the flooring at Ruth's place, which is like a weird costume antique emporium in the woods. And all we know about Ruth so far is that she was friends with Paige Lark toward the end of her life, and that Clinton got a pig mask and chainsaw from Ruth earlier to kind of help with a monster hunt. But that's all we know, and they showed up at Ruth's door, and that's where we are now. So have at it, my friends, and you take it from here.
Ty's talked to Ruth before, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I have.
Clinton is the only person who has communicated with Ruth during the during the arc that we've been playing. But each of you can decide if you have had relationships with Ruth in the past, or talk to Ruth, or if you can narratively justify it, because I have some ideas for what Ruth's role is and everything.
I feel like Mikey and Ruth would not have really crossed paths, maybe distant observers, but
yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. I think Mikey and Ruth are pretty much strangers. Lark, what do you think? Do you think maybe you talk to Ruth on a visit to town? Because Lark, kind of the only thing is that your mom and Ruth were really good friends, but they were only friends later in life. They weren't lifelong friends. And while your mom was kind of more of a extroverted staple of the town, Ruth was kind of her foil in that they had a good relationship, but Ruth was lived much more of kind of a hermited existence.
I think it's probably a situation where I know Ruth knows me, but we don't know each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Haven't met yet, but we know enough about each other.
I gotcha. And I think Clinton, you kind of the reason you went to Ruth at first and the reason why it feels like you kind of have a connection is because you have like a mutual respect for one another's like kind of cloistered off lifestyles. But you tell me if that's wrong.
Yeah, that sounds right. I think I'll just talk to Ruth and say, "Hello, Ruth. Good to see you again."
Yeah, hi, Clinton. What is it I can do for you? You mentioned something about floors?
Yeah, I got a strange happening to ask you about. Paige's boy over here. He just had a little bit of a, let's say, encounter. He's been kind of rambling and going off and not really making a lot of sense. But he was taken captive, and from what he said, it sounded like he was in a location that had a floor similar to yours. And I was curious if you were holding any monsters back there, or if Lark could have been here at all.
Certainly no monsters as far as I can tell. What happened to Lark? Do you even know, my friend? And she kind of addresses this question to Lark, like, what did you see?
You know how they say a picture's worth 1,000 words? Well, I saw it was like a movie. I don't know. I was taken to some otherworldly place by a little octopus and some under the sea guy. I was presented to this kraken-looking creature covered in human limbs and feet. And
When you say that, she kind of like gasps and goes, "Oh my good, but it wasn't supposed to." I have a lot of explaining to do. I just I'm surprised that you were brought before this creature you described so early. It doesn't seem. What did they list a purpose or reason why they revealed themselves to you in such a way?
I think I was about to be toast. I think I was going to get chopped up, but I was taken out of there, and now I'm here, and I don't want to go back.
So they were bringing an entire live specimen before, but that they've become quite bold, I see. Well, I'm speaking around a larger issue here. What I'm about to say will probably sound strange, but you all have seen a fair share of strange things. I have only been here in town for the amount of time that I have known your late mother, Lark, and I didn't drift in from some other town or another state, as it were. I came in from the place you were. It's a how can I describe this in words you might understand? It's the original way this world was supposed to look or be before it was settled by the creatures that made humans. And we call it the chop. I say we because I was an instrument of this creature that you appear to have met. They call themselves the Chop King. But they really are they represent but one faction that operates under there. And I say under because it is I suppose you could call it an ocean underneath this world. And there's a lot of nuance, but essentially your scientists cannot see it, Well, you might think it is something called, and my research might be incomplete on the subject, but like the mantle or the molten core of the world is that is merely a contrivance uh, to to prevent our detection. There is so much more than molten hot material underneath the land. There is an entire ecosystem, an entire other world. And I was sent here by this creature that calls themselves the Chop King to be the end of the line for humans. I was a cloaker, kind of a perfect device, a perfect monster to destroy the humans here in Moon Fork that were throwing off our assault and our research and our desire to retake the world. But I I met your mom, Lark, and I met the good people of this town, and I couldn't do it. I simply could not bring myself to erase such a, I don't want to say naive, but such a hopeful and spontaneous and strange race of creatures. Uh, I am, I suppose, what you all would call a shapeshifter, or I'm able to take different forms, and I was meant to infiltrate and dismantle human society, not from a weaponized form, but rather sowing discontent among your ranks. I was supposed to start here in town and then take my purpose more national and international, but I met Paige and I could not help but take a human form and settle here in town to learn more about you all, and I've lived like this since. Now, as you can imagine, when my traitorous nature was learned by my dispatchers, I was never allowed to return home. In fact, I was cursed, and I'm unable to leave this very I guess you would call it a building, this edifice. But it is a lot more than that. It is both a home and a prison. And I imagine the tiled floors that you now claim to see, and the tiled floors that you claim to have seen, Lark, are what your species anchors themselves with when otherworldly occurrences can appear before them, is something to grab onto, something kind of day to day and mundane, like tiled floors that can bring you back in touch with some sense of reality. Does that help illuminate some of this?
Did she know?
Did your mother know?
Yeah, that you were tricking her.
Oh, I wasn't tricking her, Lark. I came clean to your mother fairly early on in our what you might call friendship. Uh, it certainly was a rocky period for us, but when she eventually realized after a number of years that I really wasn't here to do any harm, we patched up our relationship, and I believe, able to be quite helpful to her and her band of freedom fighters, if you want to call them that, monster researchers, what have you. And that's I worry that that is some of the reason behind the Helms folk all but disbanding, is that there was not much more need for them, since I kind of had a lot of the answers that they were searching.
Well, I guess forgive my accusatory tone. I'm just wondering, like, I understand you're not helping them anymore, but people have gone missing, people have died. You know where they're going to some extent. You know what's happening. So, in my opinion, maybe even in our opinion, it's not enough to not help them. You need to continue to help us. What do we do?
That's the strange thing. Well, as I said, I cannot return to the chop, and my knowledge of the politics and, let's say, different forces going on in that place are now outdated. I I can give you a sense of what I knew before, but as far as how they've progressed, I can't be sure, and I'm willing to help now just as much as I was willing to help throughout my time here. But I also am unable to explain certain things. For instance, the disappearance of Clinton's family. I know nothing about that, and other things. The reason why the creatures from underneath have been able to get through after what I thought was a end all solution to their portal, if you will, to this world. They've found new ways that outdo anything I've been trained on.
So your people are just fine with you now, living on the surface from the chop, or are they trying to go after you still?
My curse here, if you will, is one that does protect me from a lot of what they could throw at me. It's, as I said, a prison and a home. People without knowledge of what the chop is can't even encounter it, which was why I was initially so surprised to see you here the other day, Clinton. It means you must have been aware of the logbooks stashed underneath Valentine's Diner, logbooks that I helped Paige meticulously put together, and similarly, it protects me from anything that any creature from the chop that might want to enter such a liminal space as this, because it and they will well know this. Creatures from that area that come into this space cannot leave. It is I don't know how to put this. There are essentially sensors or forces that can sense a creature from the chop, and if they were to enter this area, they would not be allowed out, whereas humans like yourself can come and go. It is but one of the many technological wonders the Chop King has been able to source and artifice from their research. They're although they're not the only faction down there.
Are these forces, are they known? Are they obvious to other of your kinds of creatures? Like, do they know that they could be trapped inside of your abode?
There is a sense that even an uneducated creature from the chop might get if they have approached this area in a similar way that one of your species might not like to walk toward the edge of some vast cliff. One of mine would not want to approach an area of such uncertainty and potential danger. So even beings that might not seem intelligent stay pretty clear of here.
I had a vision a couple days ago of a great force of water kind of bubbling up beneath the surface and kind of reaching a boiling point and exploding. Do you think that could have something to do with these forces starting to come to the surface and coming to attack the town, basically, or really come to the surface?
That would be consistent with what I know certain factions in the chop would want. You see, the swales are, well, imagine a great amount of pressure building up, and say in a balloon, and like little pieces of the balloon kind of stretching out of what their form might have been designed for. That is what the swales is. It's as if you over pumped a balloon with air, and the extra air created such hills, if you will, or impressions. It's the Moon Fork is the reason that this town is the vanguard of the connection between my world and yours, is because this was the last area, just coincidentally, that was sealed. This was the place where the people who made the land on which you walk livable once and for all by sealing the connection between the two worlds. And in the process of doing so, the final push to rupture that seal was made by the creatures underneath. And that's what the swales represent. And I worry that your vision could have been related to that pressure after all these years overflowing its bounds, although it seems unlikely to me.
So, do you have any idea how we might deflate this balloon? Because people I care about are trying to save this town, trying to save the fork. And in my mind, that can be done two birds, one stone. The biggest issue that we're facing right now is all these monsters coming out, hurting townsfolk, hurting us. I've been stabbed a few times, shot. And then the second issue we have are these predatory capitalistic forces that are coming to make money off of these encounters. So if we can stop these encounters, I'm thinking not only will people be safer, but all of these tourists that are kind of destroying the livelihood of this town might leave as well. What can we do?
I can only comment on the things I know from before I was trapped, and that there were 3 factions from the CHOP who had a vested interest in potentially breaking the seal between our world and yours. There was the fleet, which was led by the CHOP King, the sponsor of my mission, and their goal is essentially to use humans to and the technological advances that they have spawned to create a more perfect society. So the creature that you found was and is extremely interested in grafting, in technology, and in enslaving the race of humans to rule. Then there is Benthic Horizon, which is much more naturalistic, one might say, much more focused on destroying everything that exists above ground to establish the old ways once more. So if you've encountered any creatures that do not appear motivated by, let's say, research-oriented or intelligent, as you might perceive it, goals, it's likely that they were coming from Benthic Horizon, a group that is only radical in that they are what here on the surface you might call Luddites. They do not embrace any technological advances or anything human and would rather everything go back to the CHOP. And then there are kind of the vast majority of other creatures in a loose coalition known as Whalefall. And they are a timid bunch, generally without convictions, just wanting to live their lives. they want peace, and how things are is totally fine, but they don't want trouble. And as is, at least with my experience here on Earth, the most vocal are the ones that crave trouble and want to shake things up. And so even though Whalefall is the vast majority of occupants of the Chop, the Fleet and Benthic Horizon have far more sway, since they are more radical and violent.
You said that you and Paige that you kind of felt like your job had been done because you had sealed off the people from the Chop. What was your process for doing that? And is that something that we could replicate now, do you think, to seal these forces off?
The last I saw of the connection between the Chop and your world was out in the woods. Of course, this was back years and years ago, almost 20 years ago. At this point, maybe even longer. I don't know, time sort of runs together. But it was an unassuming spot in the woods north of town. You see, the creatures had kind of traced the pressure that was building near the swales and found an unassuming spot just outside of town to breach the area in between our worlds. And they would come through what was essentially a grotto, an area where water flowed between tree roots and brooks, and were able to come through. And their main mission, depending on what faction they came from, was either to try to, as you probably read in the logbooks, try to dig holes and disrupt the structural integrity of the swales, or conduct research and collection on humans. So whether that was taking body parts or corpses or appliances or what have you, those were kind of the two objectives that were most common. So once we sealed off that area, using some of the resources that I had at my disposal, along with kind of the manpower of the Helmsfolk, we thought it was all done. There wasn't another way to get through, but it appears that our solution was an impermanent one.
Yeah, what about the caves?
What caves?
The caves near Angel Falls. There's fish guys coming up from the ground over there. Are these the grottos you're talking about?
No, this was just in town. A little, honestly, the closest marker at that time would have been the high school.
High school?
But it wasn't necessarily near there. It was just north, pretty close to where we are now. And that's one of the reasons why I, with the small sway I had, was able to establish my domicile here, was to hopefully keep watch and at least establish a bit of a fearful perimeter for the creatures. Is there a building that has been built since that could potentially be obscuring the place where we sealed the creatures off?
Well, we pulled Lark out of the curling club, which I'm not sure if that was around back when you were doing that, but
Clinton, when was the curling club built, my friend?
Must have been I don't know this off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking that because I'm implying that like Ruth doesn't know what that is.
Yeah.
It's like, even though to folks like Lark and certainly Mystic Mikey, like the curling club seems like it's kind of always been around.
Yeah.
That's apparently not the case. So
yeah.
Maybe you respond with something like, right after, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And then Ruth is like, expresses surprise at this. And so it appears that the curling club was constructed for at least the partial purpose of allowing kind of work to go on behind the scenes to open up the portal, for lack of a better term, that that Ruth and Paige had helped seal off.
Must have been built about 10, 15 years ago.
Huh. Yes, about... That would have lined up pretty nicely with the kind of start of my internment here. I wonder... It must have been around the time when the old cannery shuttered, and when your family disappeared. Although I have no way to connect those events, I do wonder if it had something to do with coincidence, or if there was more to it than that.
Seems highly unlikely to be a coincidence given the nature of the events.
You're right. I wonder, I mean, if you all have other questions you'd like to ask me, I'd be happy to do my best to answer them. I'm not sure where else to go from here.
Well, what do you know about injuring or defeating these guys, to keep us safe? I mean, we defeated one guy who had crazy claws and teeth and stuff like that, and we killed him using a bone from more or less his own body. How do we defeat other creatures of this ilk? And we also found there's a crab kept attacking us, and we were able to temporarily put him to sleep, but he might reconstitute or something crazy might happen. He's in the basement of the diner right now. So
he won't stop bleeding.
He won't stop bleeding. The blood's warm. What do you know about defeating or injuring these guys?
It's a deeper question than one might think, particularly when it comes to the way that humans live and die, each with their own life force within them, self-contained, because all that come from the chop are fueled, for lack of a better term, by the massive underwater volcano that we call Cronoa. It is a huge... It is the life force of all that lives and breathes, if you will, under the water there, and it's actually the reason why the colonizer clerics wanted to seal it off, because when they came and conceived of humans, they essentially conceived of a self-sufficient world on which beings could thrive within this series of systems that would reproduce themselves. So, for instance, the water cycle, the sun, all of these contrivances are powered, for lack of a better term, by this life force under the water. And in the chop, Cronoa is all of those things. It is the water cycle, it is the filtration system, it is the source of energy, just like the sun. And the immense power that it has is able to allow creatures to live. Now, when you kill them here on Earth, or what you think might be killing them, they don't necessarily reconstitute, and they don't return to Cronoa, for Cronoa is almighty and ever-flowing with its life force. And so this sort of warm, what you describe as blood, is actually the part of Cronoa itself, simply flowing out of an otherwise closed system that it once before was powering, if that makes sense. When things die in the chop, they return to Cronoa. But here, since they are severed from its influence, since they are no longer within its circuit or cycle, if you will, I suppose they just keep functioning, or the means for them to continue functioning are not cut off. And so that must be the reason why this blood continues to flow.
Have you ever heard of Cronoa speaking to a human before?
Never before in my life, Clinton. Is this something that you've experienced?
I've been consulting with a spirit who calls itself Cronoa, who has been guiding us throughout these past couple of days and weeks of adventuring and horrors.
That could be new information. It's something that I've never experienced before, although when I was back there from where I'm from, before my mission, I was made privy to a technological advancement pushed forward by the Chop King and their research that had to do with essentially simulating human consciousness, or simulating what the conditions for life on this planet allow, which is these kind of the way creatures from the Chop view humans are these kind of autonomous robots, for lack of a better sense, each with their own consciousness, each with their own internal computer that is not connected to a central life force, but rather to these systems that sustain them. And what the Chopkin was trying to recreate, using some of Cronoa's power, which, as I've said, there's, at least when I was down there, was no sense of its end. It appeared to be this unending life force. It was siphoning some of the underwater volcano's power to essentially simulate these conscious beings, these autonomous beings. The way that they diagrammed them were to put them within artifacts, or these sort of shells that had no life, and they would be these flame beings, each sort of with their own ability to act and complete tasks just as a human might. And so perhaps it is related to that. Have you encountered anything like this in your travels?
Yes, we have. We've been speaking, or I've been speaking with a flame being who greatly resembles that for the past couple of weeks.
Interesting. But it was never meant to be a disembodied form, if that makes sense. I wonder if this is something, perhaps a strange side effect of the research. Have you seen any, perhaps Lark has seen any of the creatures that maybe hew closer to this original description, what the research was intending?
Could you clarify that a little bit more? We've seen
I'm
anglerfish
talking
guy
about,
with big
I'm
teeth.
talking about not fish-like creatures, or creatures that look as if they were some kind of mutation of the aquatic creatures that you have here on Earth. I'm talking about, imagine an unanimated shell, a suit of armor, an enclosed form that is somehow being animated by what would be manifested in fire or magma, or something along those lines.
That's the underwater guy I was talking about earlier. Looked like a old-fashioned scuba diver with a flame behind the mask. Didn't have any sort of emotions, just seemed to bring me, and they were talking to each other with these high-pitched, like, echolocation type communication style, and they were compatriots with these, like, shape-shifting, body doubling little tiny octopuses, like Dumbo octopuses, octopi.
Yes, this is consistent with the work that was going on before I was dispatched. But the presence that Clinton claims to have been speaking to was not at least intended at that time. That's all I can say to that, but it makes sense that they have manifested their plan. After all, it has been any number of years since the last time I laid eyes on what was then research in its infancy. The Chop King is quite an intelligent creature, able to turn projects like this around at will.
So we thank you for all the help you've been willing to give us so far. I'm wondering also, because you've described your home as a cliff to your fellow beings. If we were ever to find ourselves in a dangerous situation in your neck of the woods, if we ran here, could we find a safe haven here to escape whatever might be chasing us? Or, because I'm assuming it wouldn't work as necessarily a trap if there's an aversion to enter, but it for protection purposes, could that be a possibility?
In theory, it would. However, I would imagine it extending the analogy. If a human were in dire enough straits, would they not try to, say, climb down the side of a cliff to escape their pursuers or something along those lines? So I would think about it like that, as far as you coming in here would deter a creature who does not have enough resolve to enter. However, if one were to, that would be unfortunate insofar as I might have to find a way to coexist with them in a way that might not be as peaceful as that word sounds. And so I might need some help still in dispatching the creatures, but they would no longer be a threat to you if they followed you in here, because you could simply exit and they would not be a problem anymore. So I know that's not as clean-cut an answer as I could wish to give, but it is the truth. Additionally, it's something that if you are with someone who does not have prior knowledge of the creatures that I have mingled with and represent in a way, they will not be able to see my humble abode. So that's another thing to think about. If you are with anyone from the town or with a colleague, unless they have the intimate knowledge that you too possess, it will only be a shield for part of the group.
Just sorry, one last question for me. A couple days ago, we saw a creature. We followed a creature back to the curling club, and it seemed to be trying to get inside of it. These creatures aren't able to return, right? So, do we think that it was just attracted to the energy, or do you think that some of these creatures are trying to return to whence they came?
Oh, I'm sorry if I was unclear. I'm unable to return because I was a traitor. If the portal is indeed open, creatures are able to pass through it at will. Although there is likely a standoff going on underneath the water for who has control over the one door through. As far as I know, the Fleet and Benthic Horizon are both extremely violent and extremely driven to extract their purpose from this world. And whether or not that would sort of hinder or benefit your plans, I can't say, but that is likely the reality.
You've really given us a lot to chew on, Ruth. What's with the floor, by the way?
The only thing I can tell you is that it does not appear to me. To me, it simply looks like my old home. It looks like we're under sort of an emerald-hued batch of water that goes on and into infinity. So I must think that the tiled floor is a manifestation of your brain when you see something that is unexplainable. I have a question for you now. Lark, you mentioned there was a little octopus that you had an encounter with?
Yeah, it's this guy's girlfriend. Mikey knows her a little bit better. She presented herself, or has presented herself, as a nurse in the hospital. I was wheeled out of the hospital recovering from my injuries. And then
Now,
I don't know.
Michael, am I to believe that you are into little octopuses? Little octopi, I should say? Or were they taking another form? And how does an octopus get employed at a hospital?
I guess we don't know.
You're telling me you went on a date with an octopus? Did they look like an octopus?
No, she looked like a girl. And
Oh.
a really cute and nice girl at that.
All
and
right.
I think she even liked me back.
All right, we can dispatch with the editorializing for the moment. The only creature that fits that description, well, I could have certainly done such a thing, but I'm in here. I wonder if it was Clowner.
Clowner?
There was so the Chop King had a number of deputies. I was one of them. Lieutenants, you might call them. Clowner was another, and is kind of known to be a miscreant, a rabble rouser, a bit of a jester that whose pranks and japes usually are quite mean-spirited.
Yeah,
However,
this is the worst day of my life.
However,
okay.
You mentioned there being two of them, Lark.
I think so. Oh yeah, two guys. Yeah, there were two guys.
No. The octopus, at a certain point, split into two beings, both the same octopus, except one was nice, one was mean. And I think the nice one was the reason that I escaped the chop. It was
This
horrific.
Is
I don't know.
fascinating to me. Because the Clowner that I knew had no nice in them. They were kind of only a mean-spirited prick. I wonder if this has something to do with the research that has been kind of funneled into the creating consciousness with Cronoa. It's possible that Clowner was affected by a different creature or a different kind of personality entirely, but this is something I'll have to reflect on.
I hope you figure it out soon, because I thought I had a girlfriend this whole time.
Is it possible that our friend over here, Mikey, could have influenced Clowner at all? He's got this weird green glow to him ever since he went down to the caves at Angel Falls, and the octopus, aka Marlene, she had this pink hue to her. So I don't know if there's some sort of connection there. I don't know.
Clowner always had a pink hue, but no niceness to them. And I know nothing of humans having hues like this, so I suppose it's possible that there was some anomaly related to the hue.
Is this guy an octopus?
I really hope so.
You tell me. Are you an octopus,
As far as I
Michael?
know, I am not an octopus.
Interesting. Well, it makes sense that Clowner would have an interest in learning more about someone who was similarly hued. However, this type of kindness in Clowner, or this kind of split personality, is something that, like I said, I will have to do some research into and reflect on. That is quite surprising.
You do that. Guys, I know I'm not 21, but I think I need a drink.
Wait your turn, buddy.
Well, I can't leave. Is there anything else I can do for you?
You've been very helpful. This is really just crazy lore dump. Holy cow.
Do you have any idea what we should do next? I don't want to go back to the chop. Horrific. But at the same time, we're trying to pick up where my mother left off. I don't want her to die in vain, and I want to, help this town. So I don't know where we turn next. I don't know what we do. How do we prepare?
The solutions ahead of you are they're definitely variable, and you'll have some choice in how you approach this. The most straightforward one could be potentially finding another way to seal off the portal that has been reopened. However, this appears to only prolong the creatures in the chop, for they are ancient and smart and cunning, and they will find a way through. So we could try to do that and sort of postpone the problem, if you will, or give us more time to figure out a more permanent solution. And the only more permanent solution I can imagine is putting them down, for lack of a better term, or if not killing them, then at least empowering the vast majority of creatures down there who simply want to coexist with humans, and let bygones be bygones, for lack of a better term. However, the Whalefall as a group, like I said, is more of a loose coalition of people who don't belong to either of the more violent factions, and they are known to be fearful and cling to the status quo, for that is the basis of the life that they live. And I would find it hard to believe that they could be empowered easily. However, that is the only other more permanent solution I can envision.
Thank you, Ruth.
Of course, I'm here anytime to assist you however I can. And even though that is likely to be in a more informational capacity, it's something that I want to do, and that I've resolved myself to doing in my detainment here, and my ultimate decision to live amongst humans.
I'm sure we'll be back.
All right, goodbye. And you
Bye,
all
Ruth.
walk out
Yeah, bye, Ruth.
into the woods. You see still this kind of capsule-shaped building with the unassuming red door ahead of you as you kind of file out of it and glimpse back at it as you walk into the woods and try to find the dirt path back into town. However, before you can reach it, you notice some rustling kind of in the surrounding leaves. And you don't see anything at this point. It is getting to be around nightfall, so light is scant. And you're traipsing through the woods. But let's go ahead, and whoever wants to can roll read a bad situation.
Point of clarification.
Yes.
It being night and the fact that we're on edge, I have a flashlight. So could that help us in our not in our rolling, but the fact that we're less likely to be jump scared because we can see a little bit?
For sure. Yeah. I'll give you a +1 ongoing for using your tools. So everyone can add a +1 to their roll who wants to roll. This is plus sharp, and remember, bad stuff can happen if you roll poorly. So consider that.
I'll roll.
All
Roll.
right.
I'm +2 on sharp. I got 12.
12 is great. Okay. On a 12 plus, you can ask the keeper any question you want about the situation, not just the listed ones. But the listed ones are, what's my best way in? What's my best way out? Are there any dangers we haven't noticed? What's the biggest threat? What's most vulnerable to me? What's the best way to protect the victims? And then remember, as you're acting on these answers, you get +1 ongoing while the information's relevant. So whether that's in a fight or in investigating something, you'll get +1 ongoing. So you can ask me anything, and I have to answer in context.
Yeah. I guess what's the best way to protect the victims, assuming that we are potential victims here, or like what's the ongoing threat, I guess?
Yeah, so you are the victims in this situation, and another victim also kind of strolls up as you are making your way through the woods. And that is, you hear kind of through the woods, some of the rustling was caused by someone on their radio going, "Ksh, Anchor of Dawn to Porky the Pig. I'm finishing up my patrol here. Oh, hey guys. And it is Anchorage Wynn, the forest ranger, who you kind of said goodbye to before, who walks up to you and goes, well, I guess my secret call sign has been divulged a little earlier than I was hoping. What do y'all think of Anchor of Dawn? It's I feel like it's way grander than Porky the Pig, so I feel like the sheriff might be a little jealous. I was just doing a patrol here to make sure everything was safe after all the crazy stuff that's been happening.
It's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Holy shit, what's going on? As she hears the rustling too. So those are the victims. It's you all in Anchorage. And the best way to protect yourselves would be to either run or probably have some kind of altercation with whatever is in the woods kind of tracking your movements.
I feel like with 4 of us, we can take it on, or at least kind of see what it looks like first and then run later.
If you want to do that, you'll get +1 in a fight, so that's pretty good. And you actually can hold 3, so you get 2 more questions if you want to ask them.
Cool. Can we ask them like when the creature emerges, like what's vulnerable and stuff?
Yeah. Okay. So you can do that because that's like a question that wouldn't be on the sheet. In the sheet, it's what's most vulnerable to me, but you got a 12+, so that's great. You see emerging from the thicket just before the road, you see 4 figures. One is kind of they all appear to be roughly human-sized. So nothing like the first creature we encountered. One is cloaked in kind of a purple tattered cape with glowing red eyes that show out from kind of this cowl that makes their face obscured. One is Bigfoot. So it just looks like a Bigfoot, kind of like, it's dark, so it just looks like a Bigfoot, but it's not like a giant. It's just like maybe someone in a Bigfoot suit. You see one creature that is wearing what appears to be a Speedo with human legs, and their entire torso is like a fish head, like a huge fish head. And then the final creature that kind of emerges and is leading the pack is wearing a tweed coat and chinos. And they, in kind of a digitized voice that emerges from a kind of classic like Lucifer mask with horns, goes, hello, my friends. I am Professor Dybbuk, and I am here to, let's say, put an end to your investigation. And what's most vulnerable to them is the same thing that is most vulnerable to you all, because they are definitely just like people dressed up as monsters. So now you've got +2 if you're going to be hitting them, which is sick. And then you can ask one more question if you want.
You should ask him if he knows Professor Devil.
I guess. What's the best way in? Like, what's the best way to attack them? Like, yeah, what's the best way to attack them? I guess.
Yeah. So this happens as you're kind of thinking that and asking the environment around you. The fish-headed, kind of like skinny-legged Speedo wearing one just kind of like starts running, like just takes off down the dirt path into town. Meanwhile, the one with the cowl pulls out a revolver, and the one with that is Bigfoot kind of just like raises its fists, and then the one with the digitized devil voice just pulls out kind of like a large machete looking thing. So that all happens. The best way in would probably be to incapacitate the ranged fighter while trying to not get slashed by the machete. You figure punches are like probably the least of your worries of the three that appear to be wanting to do combat.
I think I turned to Officer Anchorage and say, lay some suppressing fire on the guy with the gun. Try to get him to try to get him to go take cover and not be able to shoot at us.
With what? Bear spray? I don't have a gun.
You don't have a gun? Which one type of police officer are you?
I'm not a police officer. I'm a forest ranger.
Forest ranger.
Come on, Clinton. You've been in town longer than me. You were one of my like interviewers when I interviewed for the job. You're a staple of the town. You got to know these things.
Call Porky Pig.
This is... coming through. Anchor of Dawn to Porky the Pig. We've got a bit of a situation up here near the curling club. Over. If you wouldn't mind just taking the dirt path up to the woods, you'll find us engaging the enemy. Over. And she pulls out this bear spray that she mentioned and just starts rushing the group of attackers. And we'll end there. We'll pick up En Medias Res next time.
Weird America, would you give me this one thing? It's medieval, but it's as modern as something on the radio or the phone you can't put down. Weird America, I'll be seeing you around. Weird America, I'll be seeing you on the swells today.